The FIU Panthers, over their program history, have sort of been this up and down team. They have a couple really good seasons and then they fall back off. And then they have a couple really good seasons and they fall back off. This right now, though, for Mike McIntyre, seems to be looking like they're starting to climb back up because last year they went 4-8. So this is a team that's on this uptrend right now. Can it continue here in 2024? And can the Panthers get to a bowl game? You're about to find out what I think here in this video. What's up, Tailgaters? You're in the booth with Tailgate Nate today. I want to welcome you to my channel and welcome you to prediction season. It's where I predict all 134 FBS level college football teams. And guys, we are so close to being done. I think we only have like a week or so left of predictions, which is both sad, but also, hey, we're going to have every single team up on my channel. And it means that college football is just this close, guys. If you're excited for the season and as big of a college football nerd as I am, I'll be posting a lot of things during the season. Make sure you hit the subscribe button and ring the bell so you know when all of my videos get uploaded to the channel. Thank you so much for your continued support over prediction season, over this summer. It's been ridiculous, and a huge part of supporting the channel is watching these videos, including this one right here. Please go back and watch my other videos. Watch as many teams as possible before the college football season kicks off, but also please interact with my channel any way you can, whether that's liking, commenting, sharing, anything else I've said or haven't said. You're helping to support my channel. It means a lot to me. Now let's dive on in. The FIU Panthers here in 2024. But before we do that, you guys have to know how predictions work on my channel. Firstly, we'll dive into the team's offense and then to the defense. And then at the end of the video, we'll go through the FIU Panther football schedule and we'll give it a good old-fashioned game-by-game preview and prediction. There are a couple more things I do want to say because right over here will be the stats the team put up either offensively or, of course, defensively last season. And for your viewing pleasure, right down there below the team's logo, I went ahead and put the team's coaching staff. Friends, let's waste no more time. Let's talk about the FIU Panthers, and let's talk about this offense last season because, hey, the passing attack really was pretty solid. Now, they are going to be losing a quarterback off of this team from last season. His name is Grayson James. He is off through the transfer portal, but was not the primary starter. He had 218 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception on 37 passes thrown last year, around 51% completion percentage. Again, was not the primary starter last year, but you still lose a guy that could have provided some value, at least in the playing time he would have gotten in the quarterback room this season. But again, not your primary starter. Your primary starter is this guy that I want to say right here. And the reason for the pause is I know that it's a little bit of a funky pronunciation, but this is how you pronounce his name, at least to my knowledge. It's K'Wan Jenkins. No, not Keone or Keone. It's K'Wan Jenkins, and he is a player to watch, not only for FIU, not only for Conference USA, but for the entire group of 5 this season. He can have a really, really good year here in 2024. 2,422 yards, 11 touchdowns, but 11 interceptions last year. Look, he's a little bit of a younger player. Last year, I believe he played as a true freshman, so this year he's going to be either a redshirt or a true sophomore, but I'm pretty sure he's a true sophomore. And look, when his development gets there, and he'll be a lot better this year than he was last year. It just comes with experience. He had pretty much a full starting season under his belt last year, and now coming with all of that experience, coupled with the improvements that he has made in this past summer, in this past offseason, I think he's going to be a really exceptional talent. I think the touchdown to interception ratio is going to get cleaned up. I think the passing yard sees a tick in the right direction. And look, this is a guy that is not going to get outside of the pocket and run a whole lot, but he did have 6 rushing touchdowns last year. So if he absolutely has to, he's been able to show the ability with the legs. But K'Wan Jenkins is a player to watch this year. You got to watch out for him. He's going to make some really big-time plays for the Panthers offense here in 2024. He'll be backed up by a guy that returns off of last year's team that threw 12 passes in Hayden Carlson, and Amari Jones will kind of step in to that third quarterback role with Grayson James going off through the transfer portal. Now, I say the pass game was pretty solid last year, and we'll talk about the weapons that are both lost, gained, and returned to this team here in the wide receiver / pass catching room. But the running back room, we have to talk about it first. It just wasn't a very good rushing attack last year, only 90 rushing yards per game last season, but it doesn't lose anyone notable out of this running back room. You do return your top 2 leading rushers among running backs last season, and they were your top 2 rushers overall. Shamari Lawrence had 566 yards and 4 touchdowns, and then you go into Kajon Owens, who had 453 yards and 5 touchdowns. Now, those were the only 2 guys that broke 100 yards for this team last year, and both of them had more than 450. So you're going to have a pretty solid 1-2 in the running back room. I think they're going to get some more carries this year. I think they are going to improve in the run game facet. And you also see Lexington Joseph come back to try to be that third running back this year, but it'll be mostly Lawrence and Owens that take over this run game for the Panthers this season. Well, not take over, that will return and lead this run game this year. Of course, they're not taking it over because they never left in the first place. All right, pass catching room. Let's talk about it. Wide receiver room. Okay, here's where you do take a couple of pretty big hits. Most notably is a guy by the name of Chris Mitchell, who was an exceptionally talented transfer who's going to go over and play Power 4 football. Okay, not technically Notre Dame, but Notre Dame right there in contention for a national championship and a college football playoff spot this season. Last year for Chris Mitchell, 1,118 yards, 7 touchdowns, and 64 catches for him last season. He also led the team in yards per reception with 17.5, so that is an exceptional weapon that K'Wan Jenkins in this offense will lose here in 2024. You also do lose Jalen Bracey, who had 316 yards receiving and a touchdown last year, gone due to graduation. What's worse is you also do lose a tight end in Jackson McDonald, as the spelling error is corrected there, but he had over 100 yards out of the tight end room last year. And yes, while he was the third leading receiver among tight ends last year, still a notable piece of the offense. He had over 100 yards. He'll be leaving this offense, both Bracey and McDonald, due to graduation. And again, Chris Mitchell has transferred over to Notre Dame. So the wide receiver room, who comes back? Well, you do get Dean Patterson coming back, 423 yards and a touchdown for him last year. Eric Rivers had 343 yards and 2 touchdowns. And then you get a couple other guys back that are going to see increased roles this season. I'm talking about Ross Fournette, Kyle McNeil, and there are a couple other names returning that you could mention as well. But I would be forgoed if I didn't mention a lot of these transfers that are entering this program, because a lot of them are very, very talented, and especially that of Nezaviah Burris. Hopefully I am pronouncing that name right. He is probably going to end up playing some starting minutes here. Really good transfer that is coming over from, I'll tell you here in a minute, coming over from Stetson. You also do get Desna Washington and Juju Lewis that enters this team as well, and they could see some pretty significant minutes in the wide receiver room this season as well. You look at the tight end room, and it's a lot of returners. Rocky Beers and Josiah Meeman were the two guys ahead of Jackson McDonald, right around 150 yards for both of them last year. They return out of the tight end room, and then Dylan Redmond will kind of step into that Jackson McDonald role from last season. Offensive line room, let's talk about it. Jacob Peace is gone due to graduation, and Philip Houston, well, he's off through the transfer portal. He's now with Coach Prime in Boulder, Colorado. So you talk about the offensive line and what returns. Well, you get Travis Burt coming back, Nair Jackson, Wyatt Lawson, Jadarius Lee, John Bach II, Ming Tajan, again, hopefully I'm saying that name right, Jackson Schultze, and a piece over from the transfer portal in Ben Schellenbach, however you pronounce that name. He enters this offensive line room as well, with hopes of being a starter for the Panthers line here in 2024. So now overall, you take a look at this offense. Again, watch out for K'Wan Jenkins. I just think he's going to be a very, very dangerous threat in really any Conference USA offense this season. I think he can have a really good season. A lot of talented pieces come in through the portal to kind of cushion the blow of Chris Mitchell, and obviously losing him is a very big deal to this offense, but you get all your running backs back. You still got a lot of good wide receiver talent. Top 2 leading receivers among tight ends come back, and the offensive line, if it can make those improvements from last season, look, the rushing game only averaged 2.9 yards per carry. You want that to get better. They allowed 46 sacks last year. That has to get better. If the offensive line can gel, K'Wan Jenkins is dangerous, and so can this offense be here in 2024. You take a look at the FIU defense here. And also, by the way, before we move on, I'm glad my slide didn't change yet. They got to stay on the field at a better rate, because this is a team that can be really dangerous when their offense is on the field, especially for long periods of points. They really couldn't stay on the field. The third down conversion percentage, not very good from last season. Same thing with the defense. You can improve the rate that they get opposing offenses off the field, but there are a lot bigger things that have to improve with this defense. Yards per game, secondary, rush defense. You want to see everything else get better in some ways more than others, or I should say in just a way. Just get better overall as a defense here in 2024. But let's talk about some of the players that could have helped them this upcoming season that'll be leaving for various reasons. And my, oh my, you do lose quite a bit of guys to the NFL on this defensive side of the football. Most notably on the defensive line are 2 guys that, again, you will see playing on Sundays in Jack Daly and Alex Nobles. Now, Daly had 25 tackles with 1.5 sacks last season. And then his teammate and Alex Nobles will also be playing in the NFL as well. He had 41 tackles, 4.5 sacks. So Nobles obviously the more impressive guy statistically than Jack Daly. But regardless, Both of those guys are now in the NFL, and you could definitely see them playing on Sundays. I believe they have both been signed. You take a look at the defensive front here and what they lose through the transfer portal. Well, you lose even more guys. Jordan Girard has entered the portal, as well as Trevante O'Neal. So again, some more impactful players here leave through the transfer portal, as Girard did have 2 sacks for the team last season. But overall, you're losing a lot of very good talent, most notably again in Daily Nobles, and of course the portal loss in Garrod, again, however you say that last name. Apologies for mispronunciations. But let's talk about what you have coming back to the defensive line room. You get Jeremy Passmore back. He did have 25 tackles and 2.5 sacks last season. By the way, I don't know if I said it, but Noble's 4.5 sacks did lead the team last season. Now back to the returners. Returning with Jeremy Passmore will be Steven Shannon, Todrick Bruton, Keegan Davis, and Quaylen Hill. You also do get a couple transfers in, and Cole Gustafson and Eddie Walls III that could prove to be really solid pieces on the defensive front for the Panthers this season. Linebacker room, you lose even more guys, as Donovan Manuel is now in the NFL as well. I believe right now a pending free agent, or not pending, but is a free agent that teams can sign. But regardless, still able to live out the lifelong dream to get to the NFL. Leading tackler last season at 121 tackles, but not the only guy to break triple digits. Also with 3 passes defended last season. Very good player was Donovan Manuel, and you will see him leave, as well as a guy by the name of Avery Huff. Now, Huff last year, 16 tackles, 1 sack, fairly solid piece in the linebacker room that leaves through the transfer portal. So who do you have coming back here in this linebacker room? Well, Reggie Peterson didn't fit on the first line just because of weird formatting things, but he was the other guy that broke triple digits last season. He had 101 tackles, second on the team in sacks with 3.5 of them. Did have an interception as well. He'll be a very, very impactful piece, and I'd be surprised if he wasn't the leading tackler at the end of the season for this Panther defense. You also do get Elijah Taylor Anderson coming back here, 45 tackles for him last season. And hey, what do you know? More guys through the transfer portal. Dwight Nuno, Nunu, however you pronounce that last name, and Travion Barnes is into this team here as well. So you get some portal pieces into the linebacker room that will, at the very least, give this defense some depth. Now, when you talk about this defensive back room, again, some fairly significant losses here. Adrian Cole is going to be gone out of this cornerback room. You take a look at what he did for the defense last year. 30 tackles, 2 passes defended last season. You also are going to be losing a guy by the name of Larry Preston, who had some solid production, 12 tackles, 2 passes defended last season. And most notably, a guy that I know declared for the NFL draft, which is why it is listed as such, but I don't think he's been invited to mini camps. I don't think he's been signed. He might have even gone to the CFL. I could be way off base on that, but I know he did declare to go play professional football and foregoing the rest of his collegiate eligibility. It's Deverick Daniel out of the safety room. He was the team's 3rd leading tackler last year, 72 tackles, 2 pass defended, had a pick last season as well. So in the defensive back room, who comes back? Well, you get Hezekiah Masses coming back to play corner, 4 pass defended and a pick for you last season, as well as Brian Blades and Victor Evans. Both of those guys returned to the defense this year. And in the cornerback room, Jamal Potts returned, 63 tackles, half a sack, 2 pass defended for him last year. CJ Christian, Bobby Sala Jr., and JoJo Evans, as well as a freshman in Shamir Sterling that could see some really big playing time for the Panthers defense this year. And there are no notable losses in the special teams room, so let's tell you who's coming back, because kickers are people too. We got to show them some love. Punting for the team this year will be Dayton Montiel. Hopefully I'm saying that name right. And Chase Gabriel back to be the primary place kicker for the team this season. And there you go. There you have the Florida International Panther defense, and let's talk about it here in 2024. Again, very, very broad saying on this defense. I know I could get a lot more specific, but for time's sake, you just want everything on this defense to improve. Get the pass rush a little bit more engaged. This is the team that only had 17 sacks last year. Start forcing some more turnovers. They only forced about a turnover per game not this year, I'm sorry, last year, and you're losing a lot of really good talent. How do the portal pieces fit? How do some of the freshmen step in and play well? You're just looking for this defense to improve, especially their on 3rd downs, as this offense looks to improve dramatically here in 2024. Defense needs to help it out this season. You take a look at the schedule for the Panthers, and here's how it all sets out. We'll go through it game by game, and let me tell you how we're going to do. We'll take a deep dive into each game here, just sort of talk about my feelings on it. But let's tell you how the schedule is laid out. Any game at home is going to be underlined, while any game on the road is in italics or that slanted text. And any game you see in green, a game I think the Panthers are going to win fairly easily. Any game in yellow should be a close competitive game, but yet one I still see the Panthers being able to win. Any game in red is a loss, and after a water break, Let's now talk about the FIU Panthers here in 2024. They start out with the game against the Indiana Hoosiers, and look, I know Indiana's been bad over the past couple of seasons. The Tom Allen fit, the Tom Allen experiment, it just didn't really work out. You're getting a good one. When Curt Cignetti comes over from James Madison, brings a ton of players with him, and they did really well in the transfer portal, while Indiana could need a couple years for Curt Cignetti to get set in the role of a Big Ten head coach and to get his players in and things like that. Indiana can be very dangerous out of the gate in year one, especially going on the road. I don't see FIU really competing with the Hoosiers, and although I think they have a couple pieces such as K'Wan Jenkins can attack this secondary and make things pretty close, overall, I think Indiana, the more talented team, I think could have the potential to surprise some teams out of the Big Ten this year, and Indiana wins against the FIU Panthers, leading the Panthers to fall to 0-1, and they fall to 0-2 after a loss here against the Central Michigan Chippewas. Now, Central Michigan is going to be another team to really watch out for this season in the Mid-American Conference. They got some good returning pieces, and Burt Emanuel is a quarterback that I like out of the Mid-American Conference. Some really good pieces returning and coming in through the portal. And overall, this one was a big toss-up for me because I think, again, FIU is going to see their improvement offensively, but the lack of improvement defensively, or not the lack of improvement defensively, but just all the questions on defense, and who knows if that defense is going to improve. Just the lack of answers is what I was trying to say there for the FIU Panthers defensively, at least in the early going of the season. I think will lead Central Michigan to a win. And then on the road against FIU versus FAU, the Owls versus the Panthers. Well, I don't think the Predator wins this one. I think the Owls will soar above and be able to get this win because the Owls are going to be a lot better of a football team than they were last season. And Tom Herman knows what it takes to win as a group of five head coach. FAU could still have a couple games this year that trip them up with new players coming in and still trying to fill some gaps and things like that. But overall, FAU is going to be much more improved from where they were last year. And that, I think, is going to be a loss for the FIU Panthers. Very well could win that game against Central Michigan, but I got you start out 0-3. To me, though, I think you at very least start out 2-3 because I think you get the win against Monmouth here, and then you go stay right at home, and I think you're going to be able to beat the Louisiana Tech Bulldogs. Now, Louisiana Tech is another team this year that's going to be right in the same little general area, same ranking, if you will, here with Florida International in Conference USA, because while it's not a roster that I absolutely am in love with, they still got a lot of really good pieces here. Jack Turner coming back at quarterback. If he can develop well, K'Wan Jenkins for Jack Turner could be a really interesting quarterback battle, but they did get a lot more transfers than FIU, and I think they're going to fit in a little bit better than some of the transfers that might play more of depth pieces for the most part. Again, there are a couple guys they're going to see some really high impact minutes that come in through the portal, but more guys will make immediate impacts for La Tech than they will for the FIU Panthers. However, that being said, K'Wan Jenkins going to be an electric player this year. You take a look at some of the pieces FIU has coming back on defense. I think they're going to be able to do enough to slow down this Bulldog attack, and I think they'll be able to beat La Tech there at home. And then they get their first bye week of the season, and honestly, it comes at a perfect time. It comes before a 2-game road stretch, and it comes before what's going to be your toughest game of the season against the reigning Group of 5 champion in the Liberty Flames, who once again will be the best team out of Conference USA this season. Caden Salter is back. Quentin Cooley is back. Ton of weapons offensively, defensively are back. I just don't see how Liberty is not going to be the best team in Conference USA this season, and I don't see FIU going on the road and pulling off that win. I also don't think they're going to go on the road and pull off a win against Scotty Walden's club because I really like Scotty Walden's club here, and I think UTEP, again, much like a lot of these teams within Conference USA, whether that's La Tech or whether that's Middle Tennessee or some of the other teams I've previewed here, UTEP also being one of them, that has the potential to break into a bowl game. Love Scotty Walden as a head coach, bringing some really talented pieces over through the transfer portal, and I think UTEP can have a much better season than they did last year. They're just a really talented team, and I think they get FIU there at home. So the season not going too well here for you. You have to come back home, trying to build some momentum here, and I don't see you beating Sam Houston either. Now, this is one of those games here where, look, I think FIU is going to be more talented than Sam Houston as the Bearcats. I think still have a couple things to figure out before they can really start taking some steps forward here in the ranks of FBS competition. But there are just going to be some games this year, guys, where I have a feeling that the lesser talented team is just going to beat the more talented team. Hey, that's college football for you. It happens all the time. This one being one of them here. Sam Houston still has got some really good pieces. You have Jace Bauer transferring over from Central Michigan to play quarterback. Jay Ducker's in at running back. Mac fans know very well what he can do during his time at Northern Illinois. Now transferring over from Memphis, where he just didn't get utilized enough, at least he felt like, and will transfer over to Sam Houston. So I think FIU loses that game as well, as they did bring in some really talented defensive players up front that'll be able to slow down the run game and put some pressure on K'Wan Jenkins, but the pass rush will be able to get home one too many times. You do have to play New Mexico State at home, and I just don't think it's going to be a great year for the New Mexico State Aggies. Why? Well, they lost a ton of talent off of last year's team, and they also lost their head coach, Jerry Kill. Ton of players are gone. I don't think this team is going to be that great this season. They're going to pick up their fair share of wins, but overall, I just don't see it for New Mexico State this season. I think the Aggies take a huge drop off, and FIU gets back on track. They win game number 3, but you can't afford a loss if you still want to get into the postseason. But you do have a bye week before, again, another very tough game against the Jacksonville State Gamecocks. And unfortunately, you have your toughest 2 games of the season on the road, and I think you lose both of them. Jacksonville State still going to be very, very talented this season, even though Zion Webb is gone. Logan Smothers is still there. Some really good pieces come in through the portal. Love the team they have there under Rich Rod, and the Gamecocks will beat the Panthers. So no bowl game for FIU this year, but they finished the season strong. I don't think Kennesaw State's going to be that great this year. In my opinion, might be one of, if not the worst teams in the country. Not a very good team out of the FCS ranks last year, and they lose a ton through the portal, now having to adjust to the next step up in the level of competition. I don't think it's going to go too well for them, and they also beat the Middle Tennessee Blue Raiders at the end of the season. Now, watch out for Nick Vadiato. He can really attack this FIU defense and make them pay, but I think K'Wan Jenkins going to be able to outduel him here at home, and that leads me to a record of 5-7, another 5-7 team with a 500 record in Conference USA. Yes, I know there are a lot of them this year, but FIU is going to improve once again this season, and it wouldn't surprise me if they made it to a bowl game, because they can beat Sam Houston, they can beat Central Michigan, and I think 7-5, maybe even 8-4, the good ceiling for this team, especially if K'Wan Jenkins really explodes. But for right now, I got 5-7. I want to hear what you guys think in the comment section down below. Remember to play hard, but tailgate harder. And next up, we're going to be talking about the Kent State Golden Flashes. Goodbye.